The fluorescent lights in the server room hummed their eternal song, a mechanical lullaby that had become the soundtrack to Damian Cross's life. He sat cross-legged on the cold tile floor at 2:47 a.m., laptop balanced on his knees, fingers dancing across keys with the practiced grace of a concert pianist. Around him, towers of blinking servers stood like sentinels, their LED lights painting his face in alternating shades of green and amber. This was his cathedral, his sanctuary, the place where he'd spent 6 years building something extraordinary. The code scrolling across his screen represented more than just lines of logic and function. It was the beating heart of Meridian Analytics, a $180 million empire built on the foundation he'd laid with his bare hands. Every algorithm, every optimization, every failsafe, his fingerprints were on all of it. The system processed financial data for Fortune 500 companies, handled millions of transactions per second, and had never, not once, experienced a critical failure. That perfect record was his pride, his legacy, the thing that kept him coming back to this cold room night after night while everyone else slept in warm beds. Damian rubbed his eyes, the exhaustion settling into his bones like sediment. He was 32 but felt older, the gray threading through his dark hair a testament to countless all-nighters. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, sitting in a chipped mug that read "World's Okayest Programmer." A gift from Marcus, the junior developer he'd mentored through 3 major system upgrades. Marcus had left 6 months ago for a position at Google, promising to stay in touch. He hadn't. The sound of heels clicking against tile broke his concentration. Damian glanced at his watch, 2:51 a.m. Nobody came to the server room at this hour. Nobody except him. Still here, Cross? The voice belonged to Victoria Ashford, daughter of CEO Richard Ashford and newly appointed Chief Operating Officer. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway's harsh light, her tailored suit sharp enough to cut glass. At 28, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, never faced a door that wasn't already open, never had to prove anything to anyone because her last name did the work for her. Damian saved his work and looked up. System upgrade. It needs to be done during off hours to minimize disruption. Victoria stepped into the room, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her tablet. How dedicated. How predictable. She said the word like it tasted bitter. Tell me something, Damian. Do you have a life outside these walls? A family? Friends? Or is this sad little cave all you have? He'd worked with Victoria for 3 months since her father promoted her, and in that time, he'd learned to recognize the particular edge in her voice that meant trouble. The system doesn't maintain itself. Someone has to. Someone. Yes. But does it have to be you? She circled closer, studying the servers like a predator assessing prey. I've been reviewing our operational costs. Do you know what I found? Damian's stomach tightened. I'm sure you're about to tell me. You're expensive, Damian. Very expensive. Senior software architect, 6 years with the company, salary of $185,000 plus benefits. And what do we get for that investment? A man who sits in a basement playing with computers. I built this system, he said quietly, standing to face her. Every line of critical code, every security protocol, every optimization that keeps us competitive. 6 years ago, yes, ancient history in tech years. Victoria's smile was sharp as broken glass. But what have you done lately? The system runs itself now. We have junior developers who can handle maintenance for a fraction of your cost. You've become... What's the word I'm looking for? She tapped her chin with one finger, a theatrical gesture. Deadweight. The word hung in the air between them, heavy as a stone. Damian felt something cold settle in his chest. Deadweight. Don't take it personally. It's just business. We're restructuring, optimizing, cutting fat. You understand optimization, don't you? It's kind of your thing. She swiped across her tablet. Effective immediately, your salary is being reduced to $95,000. Your title changes to Senior Technical Support. You'll report to Trevor in the IT department. Trevor. Damian couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Trevor graduated 6 months ago. He doesn't understand architecture. None of them do. Then it's a good thing the system runs itself. Victoria's heels clicked as she walked toward the door. Oh, and Damian? We're moving you to a cubicle on the 3rd floor. This server room is being repurposed. You have until Friday to clear out your things. Welcome to the new Meridian Analytics, leaner, more efficient, and much less sentimental. She left him standing there, surrounded by the machines he'd nurtured like children, the soft whir of cooling fans suddenly sounding like morning. The weekend passed in a blur of anger and disbelief. Damian sat in his studio apartment, staring at the walls covered in whiteboards filled with system diagrams and optimization notes. He'd brought his work home so often that home and work had become indistinguishable. His refrigerator contained energy drinks, leftover Chinese food, and a pack of string cheese that had expired 2 weeks ago. The plant his sister had given him for his birthday sat brown and dead on the windowsill. Another thing he'd failed to maintain. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Damian packed his personal belongings from the server room into 2 cardboard boxes. The coffee mug from Marcus, a photograph of his mother taken before the cancer, a small cactus that had somehow survived his neglect, and a worn notebook filled with 6 years of handwritten code annotations. The notebook was insurance, though he hadn't admitted that to himself yet. It contained the keys to the kingdom, password protocols, backdoor access codes, the location of every Easter egg and failsafe he'd built into the system's architecture. His new cubicle on the 3rd floor sat in a sea of identical gray partitions. The walls were bare, the desk small, the chair cheap and uncomfortable. Through the fabric divider, he could hear Trevor explaining to someone how to reset a password. Trevor, who now made more money than him. Trevor, who thought API stood for Application Program Internet. Damian. Trevor's head popped over the cubicle wall, his young face bright with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't yet been broken by corporate machinery. Hey man, welcome to the team. Victoria said you'd be helping us with user support. That's awesome. We could really use someone with your experience. Experience. The word felt like ashes in Damian's mouth. Yeah, great. Listen, I know this might be weird for you, but I think it's cool. We can learn a lot from you. Trevor's sincerity was almost painful. Oh, and there's a ticket that came in this morning. Client says their data refresh is running slower than usual. Can you take a look? Damian pulled up the ticket. The client was Hollister Financial, one of their biggest accounts. The slowdown was minor, barely noticeable, but he knew exactly what caused it. A memory allocation issue in a subroutine he'd flagged for optimization 3 months ago. Victoria had denied the resources to fix it, calling it unnecessary perfectionism. He could fix it in 15 minutes if he still had access to the core system. But his credentials had been downgraded. Now he could only submit requests to the development team, which would take days to process. He submitted the ticket and watched it disappear into the queue. The days bled together. Damian answered emails, reset passwords, explained basic troubleshooting to clients who didn't understand the difference between hardware and software. Meanwhile, he watched the system he'd built begin to show cracks. Small things at first, processing delays, minor glitches, error messages that shouldn't exist. He submitted tickets, wrote detailed explanations, and offered to consult on fixes. They were all marked low priority or working as designed. Victoria held weekly all-hands meetings in the glass-walled conference room on the top floor. Damian watched from his cubicle as she presented charts and graphs showing improved efficiency, reduced costs, increased profit margins. She never mentioned the growing list of client complaints. She never acknowledged the system warnings piling up in the error logs. 2 weeks into his new position, Damian was eating lunch alone in the break room when Sarah Chan sat down across from him. Sarah had been with the company almost as long as he had, working in account management. She had kind eyes and a directness he'd always appreciated. "You look terrible," she said without preamble. "Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel special." "I'm serious, Damian. You look like you haven't slept in days." She unwrapped her sandwich. "Everyone knows what Victoria did to you. It's not right." He shrugged. "It's business. She said so herself. It's petty revenge dressed up as business." Sarah lowered her voice. You know why she really did it, right? You embarrassed her in front of her father. Damian frowned. I never. 3 months ago. Board meeting. Richard asked about system vulnerabilities, and Victoria said there weren't any worth discussing. You corrected her. Showed him the penetration test results. Explained the security patches you'd implemented. Made it clear she had no idea what she was talking about. The memory surfaced slowly. He'd thought he was being helpful, providing context. He hadn't realized he was humiliating the boss's daughter in front of the board. She's been planning this since that day, Sarah continued. The salary cut, the demotion, moving you out of the server room, it's all designed to make you quit. She wants you gone but doesn't want to pay severance. Then she's going to be disappointed. I'm not quitting. The words surprised him even as he said them. I built that system. I'm not walking away. Sarah studied him for a long moment. What are you planning, Damian? I'm not planning anything. I'm just not quitting. But that was a lie and they both knew it. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon in late October. Damian was on his 17th password reset ticket of the day when his phone rang. Trevor's name flashed on the screen. Damian, thank God. We have a situation. The entire transaction processing system just went down. Every client is affected. We're talking millions of dollars in trades just frozen. Damian's heart lurched. What happened? I don't know. 1 minute everything was fine. The next minute alarms are going off everywhere. Victoria wants the development team to handle it, but nobody knows where to start. Would you be willing to take a look? He was already running toward the server room. I'm on my way. The scene that greeted him was chaos. 5 junior developers huddled around monitors, their faces pale with panic. Red error messages cascaded across screens like digital blood. The system that had never failed, that had run perfectly for 6 years, was hemorrhaging data and crashing in real time. Damian pushed through to the main terminal. One glance at the error logs told him everything. A cascading failure triggered by the memory allocation issue he'd flagged months ago, compounded by 3 separate patches that had been poorly implemented by developers who didn't understand the system's architecture. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion, each support beam failing in sequence. I can fix this, he said, but I need administrative access. Trevor looked nervous. Your credentials were downgraded. We'd need Victoria to approve. Trevor, we don't have time for bureaucracy. Every second this system is down costs the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Get me access now, or start updating your resume. Trevor made the call. 10 agonizing minutes later, Damian's access was restored. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He isolated the failing components, rerouted processing through backup servers, implemented emergency patches, and stabilized the memory allocation. It took 40 minutes of intense focus, sweat beading on his forehead, his mind moving faster than his hands. Around him, the junior developers watched in silent awe as he performed surgery on a dying system and brought it back to life. The error messages stopped. The red alerts turned green. Transaction processing resumed. The server room erupted in relieved cheers. Trevor clapped him on the shoulder. Holy shit, Damian. You saved us. You actually saved us. Damian sat back, his hands shaking from the adrenaline dump. The system's stable, but this is just a bandage. The underlying issues need to be properly addressed, or this will happen again. I can write up a comprehensive fix, but it'll take time and resources. Absolutely. Whatever you need. I'll talk to Victoria. Explain what happened. Make sure she understands. Understand what exactly? Victoria stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She walked through the room, assessing the Nowcom monitors with cool detachment. We had a critical system failure, Trevor explained eagerly. Complete transaction freeze across all clients. But Damian fixed it. He jumped right in and saved everything. It was incredible. Victoria's gaze slid to Damian. How convenient that you were here to save the day. How fortunate that you knew exactly what to do. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. What are you suggesting? Damian asked slowly. I'm suggesting that it's quite the coincidence. The system runs perfectly for years, but within weeks of your demotion, we suddenly experience a catastrophic failure that only you can fix. She stepped closer, almost like someone might have introduced a problem, created a crisis to prove their worth. The accusation hit him like a physical blow. You think I sabotaged my own system? I think people do desperate things when they feel undervalued. I think sometimes employees engage in what we call job security through chaos. Her voice was silk over steel. I also think your temporary administrative access is revoked, effective immediately. Trevor, please escort Mr. Cross back to his desk. But Victoria, Trevor started. Now, Trevor. Damian stood slowly, his mind reeling. Around him, the junior developers avoided his eyes. He'd saved their jobs, saved the company millions in losses and reputation damage, and somehow he was the villain. Sarah was waiting by his cubicle when he returned. She didn't say anything, just handed him a coffee and sat on the edge of his desk. She accused me of sabotage, he said quietly. My own system, the thing I spent 6 years building. I know. Word travels fast. Sarah sipped her own coffee. She's scared, Damian. You just proved that she needs you, that the company needs you, and that makes you dangerous. People like Victoria don't admit they're wrong. They double down. So what do I do? You have options. Document everything. Go to HR. Maybe get a lawyer. HR works for the Ashfords. A lawyer costs money I don't have. He stared at his hands, still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. I saved their system, Sarah. I saved their company. And she accused me of sabotage. Sarah was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Damian said slowly, that maybe she's right to be scared. The decision crystallized over the next 72 hours. Damian spent his weekend in the apartment, the worn notebook open on his coffee table, his laptop beside it. He wasn't planning sabotage, not exactly. He was planning an exit strategy, a way to leave with his dignity intact and a lesson taught. The system he'd built wasn't just code. It was a living architecture, and like any building, its structural integrity depended on key support elements. He'd designed it with redundancies and fail-safes, but he'd also built in proprietary algorithms that he'd never documented in the company's official records. They existed only in his notebook and his memory. The optimization protocols that made the system 40% faster than competitors, the predictive caching that prevented crashes, the security subroutines that had stopped 6 attempted breaches. Without these elements, the system would still function. But it would be slow, vulnerable, and unremarkable, just another data processing platform in a crowded market. The $180 million valuation wasn't based on the basic system. It was based on his innovations, his genius, his 6 years of sleepless nights. Monday morning, Damian arrived early. The office was empty, the lights still dim in power-saving mode. He logged into his low-level account and began the careful process of extracting his proprietary code. He didn't delete anything, not yet. He simply copied the algorithms to an encrypted drive, then began the slow work of replacing them with standard, publicly available alternatives. It was like replacing a sports car's engine with one from a minivan. The car would still drive, but it wouldn't be special anymore. The process took 3 days. He worked during lunch breaks, before dawn, after everyone left. Nobody questioned why the Deadweight was staying late. They probably assumed he was desperately trying to prove his worth. On Thursday afternoon, Victoria called an emergency meeting. The entire development team crowded into the conference room. She stood at the head of the table, her expression triumphant. I wanted to share some exciting news. After careful analysis, we've determined that Meridian Analytics is ready for acquisition. I've been in talks with Titan Tech Corporation, and they're prepared to make a substantial offer for our platform. She paused for effect. We're talking $200 million. Applause rippled through the room. Trevor whistled. Sarah, sitting beside Damian, tensed. The deal closes in 2 weeks, Victoria continued. Titan's due diligence team will be here Monday to assess our technology stack. I expect everyone to make themselves available for interviews and demonstrations. Her eyes found Damian. Everyone. After the meeting, Sarah cornered him in the hallway. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? That Victoria's about to sell a system she doesn't understand to a buyer who hasn't seen under the hood? Exactly. Damian, if you're planning something, now would be the time. He looked at her carefully. Why are you helping me? Because I've worked here 7 years, and in that time, I've watched you hold this place together with nothing but brilliance and duct tape. I've watched you train every developer we've ever hired, fix every crisis, work every holiday. And I watched Victoria spend 3 months systematically destroying you for the crime of being competent. Sarah's voice was fierce. So if you're planning to walk away and let her deal with the consequences, I'm not going to stop you. I'm going to help you. I could get sued. Breach of contract, theft of intellectual property. Not if you're careful. Not if you only remove what's legitimately yours. She pulled out her phone. I pulled your original employment contract. It's vague about intellectual property rights, especially for innovations developed outside work hours. A good portion of your code was written at home, wasn't it? Most of it. Then technically you might have a claim to it. At minimum, it would be a legal nightmare for them to prove otherwise. She smiled. And by the time they sort it out, Titan Tech will have pulled their offer. Damian thought about Victoria's face when she'd accused him of sabotage. Thought about the 6 years he'd given this place. Thought about being called Deadweight. If I do this, he said slowly, if I walk away and take my code with me, the system will still work. It just won't be worth $200 million anymore. I know. People might lose their jobs. People like Trevor, who make more than you despite having a fraction of your skill. Or people like Victoria, who inherited her position. Sarah's voice softened. The good employees will land on their feet. The parasites won't. That's not your responsibility anymore. He made his decision that night, sitting in his apartment with his mother's photograph and his dead plant and his walls of diagrams. He wasn't doing this out of revenge, he told himself. He was doing it because he deserved to own his own work. Because no one should have to give away their genius to people who called them deadweight. Friday afternoon, Damian submitted his resignation. 2 weeks' notice, professional and polite. Trevor tried to talk him out of it. Sarah smiled and said nothing. Victoria accepted it with barely concealed satisfaction. Cleaning house, she said. Making room for the future. Exactly, Damian replied. The Titan Tech due diligence team arrived on Monday morning. 3 senior engineers and a VP of technology, all flying in from Silicon Valley with the confidence of people about to write a very large check. Victoria gave them the grand tour, showed them the gleaming server room, and threw around impressive-sounding metrics about processing speed and uptime reliability. Damian was in his final week. He spent it training Trevor on basic system maintenance, documenting procedures, being the model of professional courtesy. What he didn't mention was that the procedures he documented would only work if his proprietary code was still in place, which it wouldn't be. On Tuesday, he began the deletion process. It had to be careful, surgical. He couldn't just wipe everything at once. That would be obvious sabotage, criminal even. Instead, he removed his custom algorithms piece by piece, replacing them with the